and it was this area in the Annapurna region where there was a intersection and confluence of Hinduism and Buddhism, um, and again, I'm really interested in kind of borderlands, these liminal spaces. So there were a lot of different languages, but Nepali and Tibetan were both spoken there. It was kind of a region for trade. And when I was up in that part of the country, I went to a lot of temples that were mostly Tibetan Buddhist temples, and got blessed by some lamas who would bless Western trekkers as, folks were moving through. But it was just it was a very, very impactful experience for me, and got to know some Nepali folks because I ended up trekking with two Westerners who spoke fluent Nepali, and I have this feeling that it wasn't recording, but it is. And and one of them was an anthropologist who had been working in the country for a long time, and the other one actually had lived in Nepal for about 10 years. She had been in the Peace Corps. So we just had a lot of kind of really nice inroads to meeting with community members and talking to folks and kind of knowing the culture when we entered a Buddhist temple and things like that. So that was a really, really nice and very, very different experience for me from traveling in South America. And also, I was trekking, so that's a very different kind of practice than, moving through cities and being on buses. And so there was always this kind of chaotic feature of traveling in South America. So there was a lot of time. It was a very meditative time, obviously, to be trekking, 10 miles a day in the Himalaya and to be talking to people from this religious tradition. So when I came back after that, tragically, sadly, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And so I ended up, spending a lot of time with her. She only lived for about a year and a half after she was diagnosed. And I and my three siblings really had been trained, in a sense, by my mother, by her passion for her work in hospice, to accompany her and assist her in her dying process. And that was probably, obviously, or not obviously, one of the most impactful experiences of my life. And so I spent about a month with her, the last month of her life, and had the opportunity to do that because it was during the spring and summer when I was not teaching. And so I spent really a month sitting very silently with her, and, not sort of talking about religion per se, but it was an incredibly quiet, probably one of the most spiritual experiences of my life, was just to sit with her and kind of witness that process with her. And we would sit outside a lot, and because she was liked to be really immersed in nature. And I think there's something incredibly powerful about being witness to the process of dying. She died at home. I was with her when she died, and there's so much I can say about that experience, but there was something very powerful energetically about witnessing that and being with her in the moment of her death. And so when I came back to Seattle, it was very hard for me to sort of re-enter my day-to-day life. So I went and did a 2-day silent meditation with a hospice nurse who was also a Buddhist priest, and that was very, very powerful. It was a silent meditation, but every couple hours or so I could go and sit with him and talk to him for like 15 minutes. And so because he had been a hospice nurse as well, we talked about death and about the silence of witnessing someone in dying. And so I think those experiences they certainly led me into, the second career that I developed as a psychotherapist. So again, like my whole life is about the Nexus experience. So I'm university professor and also a psychotherapist, but my orientation to psychotherapy, I went into a clinical program in phenomenological and existential psychology. And because I didn't want to do something that was like strictly sort of APA psychology. And so the existential component of it really, and the phenomenological, really connected me even more deeply to Buddhism, which I would say if there's any spiritual guiding principle, it would be Buddhism. So I do a lot of reading and studying. I wouldn't consider myself a formal Buddhist because I haven't gone through formal Buddhist training, but that's really how I'm oriented in my practice. And I draw from a lot of Buddhist teachers and philosophers, and it informs the way that I work with my clients, which is really about witnessing with them. I really de-emphasize diagnosis and kind of manualize treatment, which is sort of this by the book, way of thinking about anxiety, for example, and depression. And instead, I take a much more phenomenological approach and really try to help my clients experience the full range of their human experiencing and emotions. So, I find a lot of meaning in suffering, which is a very strong Buddhist principle. And I often say, that one of the places where I feel the most sense of well-being with my clients is when they are in the full experience, let's say, of sadness or of grief, or any range, or joy, or, anger, because that is really where we are most in touch with our humanness. And incidentally, that also informs my teaching. One of the courses that I teach almost every quarter now is called Imagining Wellbeing in the Catastrophic Era. And that course is also deeply informed by Buddhist philosophy.